174. Pelagianism. Chalcedon Position Paper number 180, September 1994. At one time, the Church regarded Pelagianism as a particularly evil heresy, but in our time, it is commonplace in most church circles and is regarded as true Christianity. Its name is derived from Pelagius, circa AD 350 to circa 425, perhaps of English birth and a successful family. Pelagius was a great advocate of free will. His associate, Celestius, was condemned for his ideas, that is, refused ordination for the following 6 propositions by a synod at Carthage in AD 411. These were, first, Adam was created mortal and would have died even if he had not sinned. The correlation between sin and death was denied. Second, Adam's sin only affected himself, not the whole human race. The covenant was denied. Third, children are born as innocent as Adam was. The consequences of the fall were rejected. Fourth, the death of people is not the consequence of Adam's fall, but of mortality. Neither do the redeemed rise corporately with Christ. Fifth, salvation is by both the law and the gospel, that is, either way. Sixth, persons without sins existed before Jesus Christ. For these propositions, Celestius was refused ordination at Carthage, but went to Rome and was ordained in AD 415. His great opponent was St. Augustine. Pelagius believed in the possibility of sinlessness, but his modern scholarly defenders insist that this and other questions were still open matters in that day, a dubious assertion. Pelagius was related to asceticism, a movement which relied on ascetic practices as a means to perfection. Over the centuries, Pelagianism has had many a revival in both Catholic and Protestant circles. A common saying in evangelical circles about election: God votes for me, the devil against me, and I cast the deciding votes, is radically Pelagian. Billy Graham's preaching, as at his 1994 Ohio revival, is plainly Pelagian. Pelagianism sees original sin as a disorder in man's sensuous nature, not the total taint of his entire being. Holding this view, Pelagians could hold that man can, at the least, cooperate in his own salvation. There was a heavily Hellenic faith in the power of man's mind or reason. 2 further errors have since Celestius's day been added to Pelagianism. 7th, the grace of God is not absolutely necessary to lead men to holiness. And 8th, grace is given to men in proportion to their merit. In all these errors, the common fact is a trust in the rational man's power to make a decision for Christ. Pelagians thus stress decision-making by man rather than God's sovereign grace. The Pelagian believes that any sole reliance on God's sovereign grace leads to a lukewarm faith. The Pelagian stress is thus on enthusiasm and revival fervour. A continual excitement marks for him a true and living church. Because the centre is shifted from God's sovereign grace to man's free will and decision, emotionalism replaces the solid assurance and power of God's electing grace. In the early years of Pelagianism, it was largely a contest between the Eastern churches and the Western, Augustinian-influenced churches. In time, however, Pelagianism infiltrated the West. Luther and Calvin were major foes to it. We easily forget how radical and revolutionary the doctrine of grace was when it entered the Greco-Roman world. Both philosophy and religion were alien to the concept, and it seemed to the pagans to represent a terrible assault on human freedom and intelligence. It was, to the Roman world, a barbarous assault on the ability of man. Pelagius brought an appealing, quote, common sense, end quote, to the argument. According to F.W. Bussell, Pelagius's formula was a simple one. If I ought, I can. Religious Thought and Heresy in the Middle Ages, page 666. Pelagius also began a line of thinking which later found expression in Abelard and, more recently, in modernism. The atonement was not viewed as a sacrifice of legal satisfaction for the sins of men, but as a pure and holy example for all of us. As against Pelagianism, the Augustinian and Reformed position is that the will of man is in bondage because man is fallen and depraved in all his being. Therefore, man cannot please God by anything he does. His will is now essentially evil, and he is at war against God. This means that man cannot be saved by his rationality. No series of proofs that demand an answer can make him a new creation. His whole nature is tainted and rebellious. Man therefore begins with a death sentence against him. Philip Schaff summed up the difference between Pelagius and Augustine ably in these words. The soul of the Pelagian system is human freedom. The soul of the Augustinian is divine grace. Pelagius begins and ends with the natural man and a trust in his ability to make decisions. Pelagius's views were presented as the voice of rationality. But we must remember that zealous Pelagianizing monks broke into a monastery at Bethlehem to abuse the inmates and then set the building on fire. The Pelagians were insistence personified. Men, they held, are not free until good and evil, life and death, and all moral decisions are placed in his power as a free agent. Freedom, for the Pelagians, meant a freedom from God's power to choose or reject God at their will. When John Locke insisted that man's mind is a blank paper and totally free of the past, he was plainly Pelagian in that statement. The Enlightenment enthroned Pelagianism in its view of man's mind, and Arminian revivalism accepted it fully. Some Pelagians, like Julian, used the, quote, noble pagans, end quote, as proof of their agreement. Arminianism has baptized Pelagianism and made it a part of the evangelical scene. We see the results in an irrelevant church.